Welcome back to Hannity. Now, on Saturday, the DNC will be voting to elect its new chairperson. And last night, one of the front-runner candidates, Congressman Kieth Ellison, had this to say about President Trump.
I think that Donald Trump has already done a number of things which legitimately raise the question of impeachment. And right now, it's not about only Donald Trump. It is about the integrity of the presidency. So, yeah, I think that we need to begin investigations to not go after Donald Trump, but to protect our Constitution and the presidency of the United States, to make sure that nobody can monetize the presidency and make profit off of it for their own gain.
And joining me now with reaction, former advisor to UK Prime Minister David Cameron and Fox News contributor Steve Hilton, Fox News contributor Richard Fowler, and Fox News contributor and opinion editor for the Washington Times, Charles Hurt. So, Charlie, what do you think about Congressman Ellison's remarks? He thinks already that President Trump has done enough damage or sufficient means to impeach him, which is, you know, shock and awe right there.
Right, it is definitely shock and awe. You know, we've looked at 8 years where Democrats have failed to lead. They failed to behave like adults here in Washington. Voters have completely thrown them out of power. They don't have a single lever of power anywhere. And now their only responsibility is to be the loyal opposition, and they can't even do that. Ellison is acting like a spoiled, child throwing a hissy fit. And I think it's a perfect example of why Democrats have managed to lose some 1,000 seats since Barack Obama first won election 8 years ago.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think the strategy is here? I mean, they suffered devastating losses in the House, in the Senate. They lost the Oval when they were counting on it. They were counting their money and their cards at the table, right? You don't do that. What is the point here? They seem to now want to go all the way to the left with kind of these like bomb-throwing statements.
Well, I think the specific immediate point is Kieth Ellison trying to win the election. And so he's basically saying what his base wants to hear. Another word for it might be pandering. But I think that the bigger point is that actually, in a broader sense, it may serve him well for his audience at the weekend in the DNC chair election. But generally speaking, I think this kind of over-the-top rhetoric really undermines the credibility of the person who says it, and actually introduces an element of hate and divisiveness to politics, which I thought the Democrats were against. But on the other hand, if you're looking at it as a Republican, I think this kind of stuff actually is something you should be cheering on, because as long as the Democrats kind of wallow in their hatred of Trump and don't do the hard work of really figuring out why, as you said, they lost elections up and down the ballot right across the country, and why working people in America no longer believe that the Democratic Party represents them, then that all helps Republicans in the long run. Yeah,
well, Richard, what is the explanation for this kind of lunacy and this bizarre behavior? I mean, making comments like that, do you think that Ellison is the odds-on favorite? Is he going to be able to achieve this by tacking to the left of everyone else that he's up against?
Well, I mean, we'll have to see. I think the election will find itself out on Saturday. But the hissy fit is an interesting word that Charlie uses there. Because if my memory serves me correctly, about 8 years ago, a guy named Donald Trump went around the country and talked about Obama's birth certificate, and he threw a rather big hissy fit. Sadly, he's president today. But here's the problem. I think instead of worried about what Democrats are doing, Republicans should start legislating. By this time in Obama's presidency, the Democrats had passed at least 4 or 5 bills. Right now, Republicans have passed, wait for it, Kimberly, goose egg, 0 bills. Well, 0 bills to the president's desk.
But you raise a very interesting point, and I'm not defending Republicans here, but my goodness, what does that say about Democrats that this monster you talk about 8 years ago is now sitting in the White House? Isn't that evidence that Democrats have completely failed on every on every level?
Charlie, that's a good point. I think it's less about that. Don't get me wrong. I think we got this election wrong. I'll be the first Democrat to tell you that. But with that being said, I think at the rate that Donald Trump is going, Republicans should also look in the mirror. I mean, here's the point, Kimberly. Think about it this way. Yeah. Anything the president says makes news. So when the president goes out there and says there was a quote-unquote attack in Sweden and he says it, it's false. And when it's false, false is also a synonym for fake.
Right.
So the president is the perpetuator of fake news, even though he says he's against fake news.
I'm going to give
That's
Steve
a walking
the last
contradiction.
30 seconds here. Steve?
Richard's right to say that in the end, the Republicans who are in power will be judged by their results, and I'm pretty confident they're determined to get those results in so that they can have a good record for the elections coming up in 2018 and the next presidential election in 2020. But in the meantime, the Democrats only have words. And if the words they use are these over-the-top hysterical statements, that is not going to serve them well in trying to win elections in the years ahead.
It sounds like the left needs their own Brexit, like Lexit, real soon. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Steve and Richard and Charlie, it was a pleasure. And coming